Okay, thank you so much. My story is about the Wintrust and executive compensation. So the CEO's total compensation was raised by 9% last year, um, and the annual bonus target for the CEO was lifted from 90% to 100%. So do you think, how do you evaluate these increases? Could they be justified by the company's performance? Because its net income increased by 25% from 2016. So how do you evaluate this?
Yeah, no, I think the increases are probably commensurate with the earnings per share and just overall earnings growth of the company on a year-over-year basis. And just given the stock performance and how they've been able to kind of retool their mortgage platform to make the expense structure a little more variable as volumes come in and out of the system. I think they've done a good job to that end. So I think, given the commercial growth that they've generated, which was in kind of the high single to low double-digit range, on top of, a lot of core funding growth to come along with that loan growth is reflects a fairly strong performance from a Bank of Wintrust's side. So I think given all those factors, I think it's fairly justified how their compensation structure has increased year over year.
So from the stock performance, could you explain more about why the stock performance in 2017 could justify this increase in the compensation?
Well, if you just think about why the stock has done so well in 2017 and why it's been able to outperform peers, there's a few factors that come to mind. One, like I just touched on, is the loan growth. They delivered. Bear with me one second while I just open up my monitor so I'm giving you the actual figures and not just trying to guess them off the top of my head. My nerves. Just bear with me one moment. So one of the main metrics bank investors look at, and one barometer for how the stock's for how the market's going to reward your stock relative to peers, relates to your organic loan growth. So in 2017, Wintrust delivered 10% year-over-year loan growth, which is above peers, which are typically in that 5 to 7% range. And Wintrust is bigger than most peers, so the law of large numbers is kind of working against them. So for them to put up a little under 10% year-over-year loan growth is pretty impressive. They were able to fund that growth essentially with core deposits. Core deposits grew 8% year-over-year. While they did have to increase their deposit rates as the Fed was raising rates earlier throughout most of 2017, they were still able to deliver nice net interest margin expansion on a core basis, including purchase accounting. Their NIM ended 2016 at 316, and they finished the year at 335. So they got just around 20 basis points of core margin expansion through 2017, which is reflective of their ability to improve their earning asset mix and fund it with core deposits. And also, just given the inherent asset sensitivity or the sensitivity of their loan portfolio to increases in short-term rates, which are controlled by the Fed. So the margin expansion, the loan growth, and funding that with core deposit growth on top of just their ability to limit overall expense growth to 6-7%, but also deliver 11-12% revenue growth speaks to a pretty strong marginal efficiency ratio, which is another metric bank investors use to evaluate a given bank's performance.
And so this company, its executive compensation plan is heavily weighted toward incentive compensation rather than fixed component, and ISA is target performance-based compensation comprised of 71% of the total compensation. So how do you evaluate this performance-based compensation taking up a large percentage of the total? Do you think it's effective?
I'm sorry, is that what?
The performance-based compensation, again, it takes 71% of the total. So it's much larger than the fixed components such as the base salaries, and the fixed benefits.
Right. Yeah, no, I think it's fine to have a little more variability in your executive compensation. That's assuming, the variability, the components behind the variability are aligned with the interests of shareholders. And I think in the case of Wintrust, the incentive compensation drivers being mostly EPS growth, core deposit growth, and tangible book value growth is something that shareholders and investors want to see occur. So as long as they're managing the company on a per share basis, which has been kind of a mantra of the Wintrust management team over the history of the company, as long as those interests are aligned, I think it's okay to have more variability in your overall executive comp structure.
And so they are utilizing this long-term and short-term incentive plan. So how do you think this kind of incentive plan works?
I'm sorry, how does it work?
Yeah. Just they are setting this incentive plan, like the long term accounts for the 3 years performance, and in the long term incentive plan, 75% of it are dependent on the company's performance, and 25% are related to the individual objectives. And for the short term, I'm not quite sure what it is, but I suppose it's something related to the annual performance.
Right. Well, I mean, I think most investors, apart from some hedge funds, which have a position in Wintrust's stock from time to time, are more so interested in the long-term performance of the company, and they don't necessarily want the management team to manage the bank on a quarter-to-quarter or month-to-month basis. Granted, good quarters make a good year, and good months make a good quarter, and so forth. But I think you always want to have an eye towards the long term, and I think having the majority of their compensation structured in a more long-term orientation, I think, is in the long run going to be beneficial to shareholders.
So you mean a longer term? I mean, you mean the design of this kind of longer term incentive plan should be beneficial to shareholders?
Yeah, because I don't think you want the management team to take any undue credit risk in the short run just to drive loan growth and drive volume and drive greater earnings in any given quarter. I think they want to add quality loan relationships on the commercial side of things with that generate strong risk-adjusted returns. So I think you got to always be mindful of the credit risk that you're taking, and if you're putting out too much volume for the sake of earnings in any given quarter, eventually that volume is going to catch up with you from a credit quality perspective.
So do you think 3 years is an appropriate period of time to set this long-term objective?
I do, because when you kind of look at the average duration of Wintrust's loan portfolio, it's probably right around 2 to 3 years in terms of the amount of churn you have in the loan portfolio. So to the extent that they're managing the credit book or their loan portfolio on a credit quality performance standpoint within that 2 to 3 year time frame, I think that sets a pretty good barometer for how the overall credit quality of the portfolio is going to play out in that period. So it just gets back to my earlier point in terms of not taking on any undue credit risk just for the sake of loan volume and earnings in any given quarter. So I think given that the duration of their portfolio and the credit risk inherent in that portfolio matches up with the duration of their incentive structure, makes sense.
And the CEO pay ratio, which means the CEO's annual total compensation versus the median pay of the median pay of all the employees of the company, is 80-1. So do you think this ratio is what kind of position do you think this ratio should be in the financial sector compared with its peers?
I don't have a good benchmark for you with that metric. I apologize.
Okay. You mean I should look at the bench? Okay. Yeah, the project statement actually contains a benchmark, so I just want to hear more opinions on this.
Sorry, what page of the proxy are you looking at?
So give it wait a moment, I'm checking it. Do you mean the benchmark page or the page of this pay ratio?
I'm not sure I'm following you.
You mean are you asking me about the page of this ratio or the page of the benchmark?
What page of the proxy are you looking on for this benchmark that you're referring to?
I'm trying to find which page it is. So the pay ratio disclosure is on 65.
We may be looking at two different documents then.
Well, I'm sorry, what?
We may be, I don't see what you're referring to on page 5 of the document I'm looking at, so. Are there any other questions you have?
Oh, yes. So do you think the shares that the CEO owns have any suggestion in terms of, I mean, this CEO owns 206,000 shares of the company stock. So do you think this suggests anything about the CEO's like compensation or its like his confidence on the company's performance? So
Did you say CEO or CFO?
CEO.
CEO. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good point. I mean, his ownership of the stock at just 0.31% of total shares outstanding is low relative to some other peers of similar size to some extent. So that may just speak to the fact that maybe he just wants to continue to run the bank and may not be looking to sell the bank just given that his inside ownership is so low relative to some other banks. So that's one aspect investors look at is how much they've taken home in cash compensation each year versus how much stock they own. Because if you own more stock, you could be more so looked at as a seller at some point.
So I didn't quite follow the beginning of your answer. You mean is this high or low? This proportion low. It's actually 200,000 shares. Is it low?
I'm saying he owns 0.31% of total shares outstanding, and that's relatively low. Typically, you see closer to 0.8% for a bank of Wintrust's size.
So what does this suggest?
It suggests he wants to continue to run the bank because he's making a lot of money in his cash compensation each year, and maybe he doesn't want to sell the bank because he sold the bank for a nice premium. He wouldn't have as much upside, perhaps, as opposed to if he just continued to run the bank on a standalone basis and took home his above average, cash compensation each year.
Okay, thank you so much for your detailed explanation and for your time and patience.
Sure thing.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.
You too. Bye.